Hello, this is Jay Mitchell, and we are back from another episode of Libertarian Censored podcast, going over all the posts in Libertarian Censored subreddit. Let's get right into it. So first we have there was an attempt to defend Trump, and that's the cross post from Ragnar OKXG, and that's a cross post from the there was an attempt subreddit, and yeah, I didn't personally watch that video, but I guess if people want to defend Trump, they should be able to do so. And if they want to attack Trump, I think they should be able to do so. I think everyone should have the freedom of speech to say whatever they want, and that's my thoughts on that issue. Then next we have the OP is saying in the comments to support the Libertarian Party by voting Republican. WTF. Another one from Ragnar OKXG, and that's a cross post from the Libertarian Party USA subreddit. And yeah, I personally don't think you should support the Libertarian Party by voting for another party. I think, by definition, supporting the Libertarian Party is when you vote and support the Libertarian Party. The other parties might try and sound libertarian, but they'll just end up trying to stab you in the back the first second they get the chance to, and that's my thoughts on that issue. Then we have cop pulls out his gun on a student outside his dorm from VYSVV, and that's a cross post from the Mind Blowing Things subreddit. And yeah, I definitely don't think that's good. It just goes to show you how the state can justify using force at any second to against people who it deems to be in opposition to them, and that's my thoughts on that issue. Then we have a dramatic rise in pregnant woman dying in Texas after abortion ban from NBCNews.com by Patom 13. And they added exclusive analysis finds the rate of maternal deaths in Texas increased 56% from 2019 to 2022 compared with just 11% nationwide during the same period. And yeah, I definitely do think that can be, even if you do support even if you're pro-life, I do think, you need to consider the unintended side effects of laws that prevent abortion. I personally would argue that I personally find abortion to be immoral, but even that, I do think, it does fall under bodily autonomy, and ultimately, just making laws against it is only going to lead to more people dying, I think, and that's my thoughts on that issue. Then we have J.D. Vance, other Republicans, refused to disavow self-proclaimed black Nazi Mark Robinson from RollingStone.com by Donald Key. And yeah, I definitely think, North Carolina is a big state selection, so I don't think they really have much wiggle room to disavow him. But with that being said, I wouldn't be surprised if he kind of sinks their campaign down there. And that's my thoughts on that issue. Then we have Trump's price controls on credit cards from them in Limelight, and they said, for a presidential race in which both leading candidates have economics degrees, we're getting an abundance of atrocious economic proposals, and Trump just added to the pile by proposing a cap on credit card interest rates. A Wall Street Journal editorial, Trump's price controls on credit cards, covers the idea, and then they share a few paragraphs from the said editorial. Donald Trump keeps trying to micro-target working-class voters, but he's bidding himself into policy and political dead ends. While working Americans catch up, we're going to push a temporary cap on credit card interest rates. He told a rally last week in New York. We're going to cap it around 10%. We can't let them make 25% and 30%. That's a price control on credit. Mr. Trump's promised temporary 10% cap is lower than the rate that America's two leading socialists proposed in 2019. A bill from Senator Bernie Sanders and Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez aimed to limit rates on consumer debt to 15%. Yet economics teaches there is no free lunch. Millions of Americans use credit cards as convenient and ubiquitous payment networks, and they don't owe interest because they pay off their balance at the end of each month. Debit cards are an alternative. People in a pinch also use credit cards to cover emergencies or financial shortfalls. The interest rates on credit cards reflect operating costs, including non-payment. A 10% cap would effectively cut off people with less pristine credit scores. After Illinois capped many consumer interest rates at 36%, all in APR, a study in the journal Public Choice said financial well-being declined for residents who lost access to a short-term, small dollar loans. Why do messengers Trump and Sanders think it's helpful to limit credit access and send folks to the pawnbroker or leg breaker instead? Credit card companies might respond by raising fees. Mr. Trump has criticized Kamala Harris for proposing price controls on groceries. He told Pennsylvania rally, never worked before, never ever worked. He's right, yet Mr. Trump is doing the same on credit cards. It's bad enough to have a Democratic Party that ignores economics. What's the point of a Republican Party that follows suit? And I would agree with that editorial. It just goes to show you that, both parties increasingly are economically illiterate, and they'll both screw you over when it comes to economics. And yeah, that's my fault there. That's why ultimately, even if you do agree with them on other positions, you have to hold them accountable when they justify economic authoritarianism that goes against the free market, and that's my faults there. Then we have State Senator Mike McDonald deflates GOP host for Nebraska winner take all in 2024 from NebraskaExaminer.com by Donald Key. And yeah, that's how that Nebraska still looks like it's gonna do go to its electoral votes by congressional district like it only Maine does, rather than have winner take all like every other state. And I personally think winner take all would probably benefit the Republicans more, but if they want to justify doing it another way, that's on them. That's their decision to make. Then we have Trump promises immigrants he will once the report will get serial numbers from NewRepublic.com by CH4Locks. And yeah, I don't think that's good. But if we already have a lot of people have, or a lot of U.S. citizens already have numbers of Social Security numbers, this isn't too far a step from that. I personally don't think the government should be labeling its citizens with any numbers or labels whatsoever. But we already have justification for government databases and Social Security, so I don't think this is too far a stretch from that. And that's my thoughts on that issue. Then we have Israel settlers go on a boat tour to watch the destruction of Gaza from Filmsy Out 5563, and that's a cross post from the Public Freakout subreddit. And yeah, I definitely don't like Israel's foreign policy when it comes to Palestine. I definitely think it's overly authoritarian, and they recently said, I think they said de-escalate through escalation, and that's pretty much just war is peace from 1984. It just goes to show you that the states shouldn't be. You can't trust the state when it comes to the use of force, especially when it comes to international matters, kind of like what Israel-Palestine is. Although many Israelis might not see it that the way, they might consider they own all of Palestine, even if they don't. And that's my thoughts on that issue. Then we have Joe Biden appears to snap at staffers during a press conference from Olu Wuzzy Gunner, and that's a YouTube video from The Telegraph. And they added, "Do you want to give the Biden-Harris Walz administration 4 to 8 more years?" And yeah, a lot of detractors might say, "Oh, but Joe Biden's not running for president," but Kamala Harris is pretty much the same thing. And yeah, it doesn't really matter which of them is in power, I would say. It doesn't really, even if Donald Trump wins, the president is just mostly a figurehead. Well, the deep state, which like the alphabet agencies, military-industrial complex, and other unelected bureaucrats really run the country. And that's my thoughts on that issue. Then we have Ron DeSantis bans Florida's sex ed classes for mentioning anatomy and contraceptives. All districts are now required to promote abstinence, exclude consent, and remove any pictures of reproductive organs. And they add in parentheses, celebrating ignorance from LGBTQNation.com by CH4Locks. And I definitely do think teachers should be able to teach what they want, and I don't think the state should say what teachers can and can't teach. And that's why I think we got to get rid of state control of education, emphasize homeschooling. But a lot of people would say, "Oh, that's not the right answer. We need the state to control education," and that's why they're fundamentally statist. With that being said, I do hear a increasingly bigger push to make homeschooling illegal, especially from the left. And I definitely don't think that's very libertarian. We need to let people teach whatever they want to their kids, and that's my thoughts on that issue. Then we have press groups condemn Israel closing Al Jazeera office in Ramallah. Freedom of the Press News from AlJazeera.com by Ragnar OKXG. And I definitely agree that that's not good. I don't really care for Al Jazeera. They pretty much are Qatar state propaganda. But even propaganda is free speech, even if you don't like it. And that's my thoughts on that issue. Then we have Haitian group brings criminal charges against Trump fans for Springfield comments from CH4Locks from Fox8.com, and that's crossed from the Wall subreddit. And I definitely don't really care for, Trump's Trump events saying, "Oh, they're eating dogs, they're eating cats." Well, they don't seem to have proof for it. But with that being said, they absolutely have First Amendment rights to say whatever they want to, and that's my thoughts on that issue. Then we have What Did He Do from Realize 5794, and that's crosswords from the Conspiracy Theory subreddit. Diddy endorses Joe Biden, launches Black Political Party. We own our politics. And yeah, it just goes to show you how, that was back when he was an asset. Now that he's a liability, they throw him to the curb or whatever. And yeah, that's what pretty much seems to have happened. If you descend enough from the official party line, they'll just throw you away like they did to Diddy here. Then we have Sonoma County judge sides with sheriff blocking subpoenas and whistleblower investigation from PressDemocrat.com by Ninja Lover. And yeah, I personally don't really care for government subpoenas for whistleblowers. With that being said, I think if people want to whistleblow, they should be able to. But sometimes there might be consequences for that, and they need to consider that as well, especially with a state that definitely wants to go after any dissent whatsoever. It seems. Then we have social housing, AOC, and Tina Smith's solution to the housing crisis from Lemon Limelight. And they said Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Senator Tina Smith writes in a guest essay for the New York Times our solution to the housing crisis. And then they shared paragraphs from their essay. In most American countries, minimum wage workers can't afford to rent even a modest one-bedroom apartment. Working families are bidding against the world's biggest financial firms for homes. On top of it all, people living in public housing complexes across the country are increasingly exposed to inhumane conditions after years of federal neglect and underinvestment. It's becoming nearly impossible for working-class people to buy and keep a roof over their heads. Congress must respond with a plan that matches the scale of this crisis. Corporate landlords make record profits while half of America's 44 million renters struggle to pay rent. For a generation of young people, the idea of home has become loaded with anxiety. Too many know they can't find an affordable, stable place to rent, let alone buy. Why is this happening? For decades, thanks to restrictive zoning laws and increasing construction costs, we simply haven't built enough new housing. There is another way, social housing. Instead of treating real estate as a commodity, we can underwrite the construction of millions of homes and apartments that by law must remain affordable. Some will be rental units, others would offer Americans the opportunity to build equity. And they had a few more paragraphs. And I personally think, social housing sounds like something that's, very well intentioned, but it definitely does go against the free market, and I think it's very important that we keep the market free rather than justify state authoritarianism in regards to the housing market, and that's my thoughts on that issue. Then we have Walsall Mayor moves ballot box and controversial act from Walsall pilot and review by CH4 Locks, and yeah, I definitely don't think that is that libertarian, but ultimately the state can move whatever ballot boxes it wants to, and sometimes people won't be able to hold them accountable for it. That's why I definitely think voting isn't that libertarian, because the state can inherently control voting and what does and does not count as a vote, and that's my thoughts on that issue. Then we have LPNH endorses the death penalty from LegioX, and that's a tweet from Libertarian Party of New Hampshire. From Figuritarian, sorry, and that's libertarians rescuing people who have strong claims of innocence. And that was them, Chase Oliver, saying, "May rest in peace. May those who ignore the culture stoppings never have a good night's sleep for the remainder of their lives." Hashtag Marcellus Williams. Hashtag Marcellus Williams matters. And then they responded, "Marcellus Williams was a fucking murderer, you gay, arslerd communist." And yeah, ultimately, they might support the death penalty, but they definitely didn't. I don't know if they supported that in that comment. They're saying Marcellus Williams was definitely a murderer, and I probably would agree with that. With that being said, I definitely don't think capital punishment is that libertarian. I personally think if we absolutely did have to have executions, they should be like most dangerous game style. If the person who's scheduled to be executed just thrown on an island, given resources so that they can defend themselves against the state. But because I definitely think my big problem with capital punishment is that takes away individual autonomy, and I don't think taking away individual autonomy is that libertarian, even if it's for the worst people on earth, especially if they aren't currently violating the NAP. And that's my thoughts on that issue. Then we have NYC Mayor Eric Adams led by grand jury in historic federal probe, original title from Ground News by Dr. 07. And yeah, it might be another Diddy case where, he descended from the party line too much and now they're going after him for it. And that's my thoughts on that issue. Then we have, these people should be put in jail the way they talk about our judges and our justices. The former president said despite the First Amendment and his record from MSNBC.com by CH4 Locks. And yeah, I definitely don't think Trump's very supportive of the First Amendment, but at least very much the media will call him out on it. They'd never call out Kamala Harris or Tim Walz for saying stuff that's against the First Amendment, like we have to criminalize hate speech, misinformation. I think that's very important to remember as well. And let's see, I think we're gonna Looks like there might be a new post. Hong Kong court sentences journalists to 20 months in jail in cases barometer of press freedom from APnews.com by Baton Furchan. And I definitely don't think that's good. You know, it just goes to show you how Hong Kong is increasingly run by China they can justify arresting journalists if they go against what the state says. I won't be surprised if you start seeing that here in the U.S. soon. Even with the First Amendment, they'll just find a way around it, like they did with the Patriot Act and the Fourth Amendment. Now, which means they don't even need warrants anymore. You know, they'll just find a way around the Bill of Rights and Constitution whenever possible, and that's increasingly what we see when it comes to the U.S. government. And I think we're gonna wrap it up there. I'll see you guys in the next episode. Bye.